Alright everyone, today we start off with Twitter Files Part 8. Of course, now we've gone beyond FBI involvement, now we're going into CENTCOM involvement, so the US military attachment using propaganda on Twitter and other sites as well. Now part of this we already know. Link in the description again, it's a multi-tweet thread. I'm going to give you the short version here, just sort of compress it for you and give you the juicy details if you don't want to have to go through all the tweets, although, you know, if you get a moment, you should probably read through that. Going through Li Fang, by the way. He's the one dropping this one. I guess Barry Weiss was shoved aside after mildly sparring with Elon Musk. I don't know exactly how great an idea it was to give her several major document dumps and then dump on her. But, you know, it's a private website. Elon Musk is the dictator there. He can do what he wants, even if, you know, there might have been better ways to go about it, admittedly, just to be clear. Long story short, here's what we already knew. The U.S. government, in the wake of Obama removing the ban on the government utilizing domestic propaganda, mainly that affects media. So the government, like right now, the Biden administration partners openly with CNN and other tabloid rags to spin economic news. This has been admitted to by those legacy media outlets. Another part is through social media. Of course, the legacy media and others have a presence there as well anyway. The propaganda gets spread there. It does have an impact on social media. What's not a surprise is that the U.S. military had a bunch of propaganda accounts on the platform. And it goes beyond Twitter. I've referred frequently to the end of the 2000s. The U.S. Air Force already had a bunch of dummy accounts on Facebook. This is prior to Obama saying that U.S. domestic propaganda was okay. Of course, at the time, those accounts were geared towards influencing foreign language pages mainly. That appears to be mainly the case here. So you had Arabic and Russian language channels, accounts on Twitter rather, and other sites that were attempting to influence discourse. You have deepfake memes going on, and had for years actually, before deepfakes began getting big in the news. They were already involved with this, which is also interesting. Hint, hint, they've got technology that they don't let on that they have, and typically then gets exported to the civilian market later, once it's outlived its propagandistic usefulness fully. We already knew this. It doesn't surprise me in the least. It would have surprised me more if there wasn't an involvement of U.S. Military to influence foreign policy and individuals. By the way, there are other countries that do this. If you think that Russia doesn't have dummy accounts on these same sites, that China certainly doesn't have dummy accounts, just check Xinhua News' follower count on Twitter and then look at the engagement. They've got millions of them. China far outstrips the United States when it comes to this. Britain does it. France does it. Saudi Arabia certainly does it. Other major players. Any country with a significant enough economy and a significant enough skin in the game as far as diplomacy goes does two things that are kind of shady. It propagandizes using non-actual individuals, dummy accounts, and paid shills, by the way, although they tend to be more partisan and in-country, like the DNC with David Brock and their outsourcing for him, etc., etc. ShareBlue, groups like that. That's number one. And number two, they engage in espionage, which is tied into the digital era at this point to a significant amount. Again, China is the biggest player on the latter end. We've got over 1 million Chinese spies that were caught out, having infiltrated every aspect of Western life, from academia to military to corporate to even government itself. Feinstein's driver was a Russian spy. Eric Swalwell was fucking a Russian spy. A Chinese spy. Many such cases. What is interesting here, and this is why this is still a doozy, because we knew all of that other shit already. We knew that this was happening. We've known since the days of Project Echelon being talked about on the 9/11 thermite pages on Weird Side of YouTube, for example. This is a long time ago, about 15 years. I was there for it. Good times, by the way. Very interesting documentary materials at times. What we didn't know is that Twitter became aware of the fact that these propaganda accounts were operating on its platform, running afoul, by the way, of its botting rules. It eventually banned those accounts. But they became aware of the presence of those accounts years and years before they banned them. Effectively, the U.S. government was skirting the rules on site against botting, against that automated behavior, because it's non-speech. Of course, a robot doesn't have First Amendment rights. It's not actually a real person. It's a script. It's a computer attempting to communicate with people to influence them, sometimes in a malevolent manner. And not always, but sometimes. Of course, you could rig up a bunch of libertarian bots to spread free speech in China if you really wanted to on their intranet. That would be benevolent, but it'd still be propaganda. You're still attempting to astroturf a concept. You're just doing it for the good of mankind, I would assume. When we look at this, though, 3 years went by between when they knew that these accounts existed, even being told about them, like they were talking actively with the U.S. military, with CENTCOM at the time, and when they banned them. What happened in that interim period? We had an election now, didn't we? The 2020 election. Again, the coincidences keep piling up, and this is at the same time, of course, that the FBI is trying to get Twitter to remove lawful speech by non-bot U.S. users using taxpayer money to the tune of more than $3.5 million being paid as a bribe to Twitter, covering employee expenses for the extra time necessary to do research into these accounts. We think that they're harmful foreign actors. Of course, they weren't. They're U.S. citizens, they're engaged in lawful speech, and they're not botting. They're actual real individuals. Imagine that. The U.S. government used taxpayer money to simultaneously suppress actual lawful, reasonable free speech among U.S. citizens while promoting non-speech with the blessing of Twitter for 3 years at a time. They knew it was going on. They acknowledged that it was going on, and they did nothing until right after the election. Then all of the accounts got shit-canned, of course. Can you say covering your ass? Because I think that that's what's happening. I wish the cat would cover her ass more, shaking it like an OnlyFans model, generally speaking at the moment. So that's a long story short. Most of this we knew. Or at least you speculated it. Look, if you don't think that the U.S. military and all other major militaries in the world don't involve themselves with this behavior, don't avail themselves of bot accounts when it's so easy for them to do so, they've got armies of hackers, they've got armies of techies, they've got the money, which is graciously supplied by people like you and I. If you happen to be a U.S. citizen, you helped pay for this. What's more concerning is that Twitter took no action despite knowing it was going on, knowing it was against the rules, acknowledging that, number one. They had to have acknowledged it because eventually they did ban the accounts. That's first and foremost. And then present themselves as unbiased in so doing. That's the other part. The other big thing here is that Twitter, you'll remember this, they very visibly banned a bunch of U.S. government bot accounts a couple of years ago. This was a story at the time. They're like, well, look, we're not biased. We don't stand for botting on our platform, neither Chinese nor U.S. government. We will even go up against our own government. Of course, it's a U.S. firm. We will even bravely go up against them and tell them, no, Uncle Sam, you're not allowed to bot on our networks. I'm sorry, but we support free expression. But they were simultaneously working with CENTCOM and the FBI, gave them full latitude, knew it was going on and did nothing, while also taking millions of taxpayer dollars to ban U.S. citizens. This needs a full investigation, both the FBI involvement and the CENTCOM involvement. Yoel Roth should be subpoenaed as soon as the new House majority takes control. Won't, but should be. Vagina should be before them. Jack Dorsey should be called back in. He should be held in contempt. Even with Elon Musk covering for him and saying, well, ultimately Jack Dorsey was unaware or powerless to do anything about that, he lied to Congress under oath. He said none of this shit was happening. Why are we letting Jack Dorsey off? Is it because he's that annoying kid that we knew in the master's program who kept dropping acid and would always, harsh your vibes when you're smoking weed by saying stupid shit that he thought was enlightened? Are we going to pretend that Jack Dorsey is anything other than that person? It's exactly like Steve Jobs. He was an insufferable asshat too. But for some reason, he's allowed to perjure himself. He's allowed to lie openly to Congress. Nothing happens. So, okay, see, his butt's been wiped. Because he knew this was going on. He had to have known. Like, he didn't get a report that CENTCOM was running propaganda accounts for 3 fucking years on Twitter. He was totally unaware. Yeah, the CEO of the site didn't know. No clue what's... Agrawal didn't know either. He never perjured himself. Don't call him before Congress. It's a shit show. And it was taxpayer funded. I don't really care, by the way, since you can't really stop it. I don't really care that CENTCOM would run bot accounts in foreign languages to try to influence Iranian opinion on oil sales or something like that. It's going to happen anyway, and it's a counterbalance to what other countries do as well. But if it's against the site's behavior and they become aware of that fact and they don't do anything, That's, again, rules for thee, not for me, and they openly proclaimed their own non-bias by very visibly banning these accounts, but it was years later. And it was all funded by you and by me, and that needs an investigation that sadly is unlikely to ever happen. That's about all. Peace out.